Not much is known of this era or anything predating it, aside from that it was the main period in Spectra's history during which the architects reigned. It ended approximately 40,000 years ago, when the architects seemingly vanished without a hint as to why or where they might have gone. As for how long it lasted, historians are hesitant to place an exact estimate, but in however much time they had, the architects accomplished a great deal. During this era, the planes were constructed, and the chosen races were uprooted from their respective homeworlds to instead grow and evolve on the planes. The Sentinels were also created during this time, or so say the estimates of most researchers who have done their best to study the elusive drones from afar. This era covers the period of time between the architects' disappearance and when the chosen races were uplifted by the Sentinels. Ending 2,998 years ago, this era was mostly filled with the evolutionary processes of Spectra's races as they became more and more behaviorally modern. While the chosen races lived out their lives on the plains, so too did others like the Scinon evolve and grow in the oceans of their homeworld. This was a time of growth, of learning, and of progress. No race is known to have been spacefaring during this period, aside from the possible exception of the exodeists, as they are not native to Spectra, and most of their people's history from that time has been lost. A great point of contention between the Irvagaleni and the Kugra is which of them discovered the means with which to fish first. For a long time, the Irvas upheld that their race had done so, as evidenced by cave drawings on their plane depicting tribal gatherings around campfires with baskets of fish. However, the recent discovery of a primitive fishhook in the belly of a fossilized eel on the Gamma plane seems to disprove that claim, and instead suggest that Kugra fishing techniques predated the Irvas by nearly 70 years. After the Ascensions, it was a race between each of the chosen species to expand outward and claim territory. With help from the Sentinels, technological advances that would have likely taken centuries to develop on their own were made within just a few short years. Launching from the planes and colony ships, the chosen races eagerly took to the stars. They explored what Spectra had to offer, planting the seeds of their future dominion in the soil of the Virgin Galaxy. However, each of their quests for expansion occasionally resulted in them encroaching on one another's territory and tended to eat away at the overall tolerance they had for one another. The greatest example of this is the rivalry between the Irvagaleni and the Kugra, a feud which still exists to this day. During the first few centuries of the expansion era, the Kugra discovered another spacefaring race, the Pikes. Though diminutive in stature and not physically intimidating to the Kugra in the slightest, the Pikes' level of intelligence was unparalleled by the other known races, putting the average member of their species on par with minds most would consider to be geniuses. An alliance was quickly forged between the two, eventually leading to what has come to be known as the Kugra hegemony. The Irvagaleni Empire, having already existed before the Ascensions, only grew stronger with their added territory. Expressing disdain for the other races and sporting what many believe to be an inherent superiority complex, the majority of the Irvas neglected to forge relationships with other species aside from occasional trade agreements. Over time, the Irvagaleni Empire grew to be the largest single-species government in all of Spectra. It was also during this time that the races found out about the horrifying nature of the Umbra. Entire colony ships would go missing when venturing into a certain sector of space, and those that came back reported worlds to either be nearly entirely dead and barren, or infested with beasts that sought only to slaughter all other living creatures they encountered. Needless to say, all races eventually figured out the unsettling properties of the large region of space that they came to call the Umbra and refused to explore it further. Even with their aggressive colonialism, the Irvas don't dare extend their territory into its reaches. For now, Both Empire Space and Hegemony Space tentatively border the Umbra, with it separating the two of them on one side of the galaxy. The current era of Spectra began nearly 900 years ago. By this time, several different races had been discovered and cataloged, including the Teregrine and the Dahmak. Space routes and territories between races had long since been established, and most corners of Spectra have been touched by someone or another. In an effort to bolster relationships and ease of trade with other races, the Pike suggested the construction of a massive communal space station aboard which all species could interact with one another as if it were neutral ground. The Kugras accepted this idea and began work on it with the aid of their allied races. Surprisingly, the Irvas offered assistance as well, hoping not to be excluded from the prospective rewards of such an investment. After several decades of work, the Mercantile was completed, a space station that circled around the mid-rim of the galaxy every 2 years, a period which is referred to as a cycle, entering all sectors except the Umbra at some point during its journey.